host. Hello, Knowledge fans. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and we've got some big-time fun planned for you today.
And I'm your host, Rachel, and we've actually been talking about knowledge this whole month.
Knowledge is learning something new so you can be better at whatever you do.
We know that all knowledge comes from God, and if we find knowledge, we'll be able to make the wise choice.
But knowledge doesn't just come to us. We have to seek it out.
I can't believe we're already wrapping up this first month of the new year.
I don't know about you, but I need to sing these words today. Jesus, I will trust you.
Let's give Jesus our trust as we sing this. Come on.
When I am scared of what I don't know, when I'm afraid, thinking I'm alone, you remind me that I still belong. God, you help me to grow. When I am scared, I don't feel strong. When I'm afraid, something is wrong. You remind me that you're in control. You teach me to know I am learning you, make me so courageous. You make me curious. There is so much you have given, so much to explore. You're teaching me, I'm gonna be a better me. Scared of what I don't know, when I'm afraid, thinking I'm alone, you remind me that I still belong. Oh yeah, God, you help me to grow. When I am scared, I don't feel strong. When I'm afraid, something is wrong. You remind me that you're in control.
It seems the news never stops when it comes to a man named Jesus. Now, let's listen to this story about Jesus' cousin.
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the first book of the New Testament, Matthew. But before Matthew, in the very beginning, out of a deep, deep love, God made an amazing world. But when people turned away from God, the world was broken.
God made a plan to draw people back into a relationship. So at the right time, God sent a tiny baby to be born in the small town of Bethlehem, God's very own son, Jesus.
God sent another special baby named John to a priest named Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth. Even before John was born, an angel told his father Zechariah that John would point people to God, which is exactly what John did.
And that's where our story starts.
Take it away.
Hey, everyone. John was a unique kind of guy.
He wore rough clothing made from camel skins, and for food he scavenged crunchy locusts and ate honey from wild bees. John preached to crowds by the Jordan River, calling them to turn back to God. Then he dipped them into the waters and drew them up again as a sign of their changed hearts.
I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I am will come. I'm not good enough to untie the straps of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire.
Then Jesus himself came down to the Jordan River and asked John to baptize him.
It is right for us to do this. It carries out God's holy plan.
As Jesus emerged, dripping from the waters, heaven opened up. John saw God's Spirit rest on Jesus as a dove. They heard God's voice from heaven.
This is my Son, and I love him. I am very pleased with him.
If John had any doubts about who Jesus was, it seems they would have been washed away in that very moment. I mean, he heard God's actual voice. Soon after, John pointed to Jesus and cried out,
Look, the Lamb of God. He takes away the sin of the world.
After 40 days in the wilderness alone with God, Jesus began to gather followers and to teach and heal people. John gladly pointed his own disciples to follow Jesus instead.
I am not the Messiah. I was sent ahead of him. He must become more important. I must become less important.
Now, John didn't stop his own teaching, though, and he didn't sugarcoat the truth, even when speaking to powerful leaders. In fact, John came head-to-head with Herod, the Roman-appointed ruler of Galilee.
You have broken God's laws.
You locust eater! I can do whatever I want.
Herod was so angry, he had John thrown in prison. John, who was used to wind and sky, was now confined to narrow walls and dim light. He heard only snatches of news from the outside when his followers were allowed to visit him.
Jesus healed a woman who's been sick for 12 years.
He even brought a little girl back to life.
Instead of encouraging John, the news he heard began to weigh on him, especially as the months ticked by. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Soon John had been behind bars for, well, maybe as long as a year. All kinds of questions and doubts began to creep into his heart, like the rats that skittered across his cell floor at night.
When is Jesus going to start getting rid of the Romans? What about that new kingdom that was supposed to come? If Jesus is really the Messiah, why am I still stuck here?
The questions gnawed away inside of John, even though he had actually heard God's voice. He began to grow sick with doubt. Finally, John sent several of his followers to Jesus with a cry straight from the heart. John's followers found Jesus surrounded by an eager crowd, and as Jesus touched each sick person, illness dropped away. People blind or deaf from birth could see and hear in an instant. John's followers squeezed through to make themselves heard.
Please, Jesus, John wants to know, are you the one who is supposed to come?
Or should we look for someone else?
Now, Jesus could have been annoyed with John for asking more questions and needing assurance. Instead, Jesus offered clear evidence of God's work.
Go back to John. Report to him what you hear and see. Blind people receive sight. Disabled people walk. Those who have skin diseases are made clean. Deaf people hear. Those who are dead are raised to life. And the good news is preached to those who are poor. Blessed is anyone who does not give up their faith because of me.
We don't know exactly how John responded when he received this compassionate message from Jesus, but he could know that Jesus wasn't angry or annoyed about the questions. Those words must have been a breath of fresh air for John. He was still in prison, but he could have the comfort of knowing that Jesus hadn't forgotten him. And then in the midst of a clamoring crowd, Jesus had stopped to send a message crafted just for John.
So, wow. John had actually heard God speak from heaven, and he still wasn't sure?
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy to forget and start doubting no matter what we see or hear.
Even when things don't go our way.
Yep. But God will never get angry with us for asking. In fact, Jesus' brother James wrote this: "If any of you needs wisdom, you should ask God for it. He will give it to you. God gives freely to everyone and doesn't find fault."
That is awesome.
So, what's our part in the story?
Maybe you want to know why your grandma has been in the hospital for so long. It's totally okay to tell God how you feel about it and ask God for help.
Yeah, God might not make your grandma better in the way or time you expect, but God can still give you peace in your heart.
It might be that you want to know why your dad lost his job, or why you have to go to a new school.
Or even why you still struggle with tying your shoes.
God will welcome all of your questions with love and compassion.
In fact, it's okay to ask a question about anything at all, like when your teacher had just explained something about fractions or how an engine works, and your head is spinning.
Yeah, I usually just slide down to my seat and hope I'll figure it out later because I don't want to make a fool of myself.
But when that happens, ask. You'll be glad you did.
And your teacher will be too.
I think you got it. Don't be afraid to ask. See you next time.
We have something special for you all today. Check out our Xtreme Kidz trivia.
What a beautiful winter wonderland we've found ourselves in today. It looks like everything is covered in a delicate, untouched blanket of snow. The only thing that could possibly make this better would be if someone were to start a snowball fight! We seem to be in the middle of an epic snowball fight. Don't worry though, I know how we can avoid getting pummeled with these freezing projectiles. The rules are simple. I'll give you a name of a Bible character. Then I'll show you 3 snowballs with facts about that Bible character. 2 of these facts will be true, but 1 will not be. That's the snowball that's about to come flying right at you. All you have to do to avoid it, though, is hold up the number of fingers for the snowball that's not telling the truth. 1, 2, or 3. If you get it right, you're still in the game. If not, you can keep playing, but please take a seat. Easy enough, right? Great! Everybody on your feet! It's time for this snowball fight to begin. Our first Bible character is Daniel. Now, which of these is not true about Daniel? 1. Daniel spent a night in a den of lions. 2. Daniel prayed regularly. 3. Daniel was Esther's father. Remember, hold up 1, 2, or 3 fingers based on which snowball you think is not telling the truth. Okay, time's up. Who's holding up 3 fingers? You're correct. Daniel was thrown into a den of lions because he did pray regularly, but he was not Esther's dad. Good job. Let's try another. Our next Bible character is Adam. Now, which of these is not true about Adam? 1. Adam built the ark. 2. Adam was the first man. 3. Adam was married to Eve. Okay, time to get those fingers up. Which snowball do you think is not telling the truth? Time's up! Who's holding up 1 finger? Because you just avoided a snowball. Noah was actually the person who built the ark. Let's do another one. Moses is our next Bible character. Now, which of these is not true about Moses? 1. Moses saw a burning bush. 2. Moses walked on water. 3. Moses spoke with Pharaoh. All right, it's time to decide. Which snowball do you think is not telling the truth? Time's up! Who's holding up 2 fingers? You are correct! Moses never walked on water. Let's try another. Ruth is our next Bible character. Now, Which of these is not true about Ruth? 1. Ruth married Boaz. 2. Ruth was from Moab. 3. Ruth was Naomi's mother. So what do you think? Which of these snowballs is incorrect and therefore about to come flying right at us? Time's up! Who's holding up 3 fingers? You are correct! Ruth was actually Naomi's daughter-in-law. Good job. Paul is our next Bible character. Now, which of these is not true about Paul? 1. Paul was swallowed by a fish. 2. Paul used to be called Saul. 3. Paul was blinded by a bright light. It's time to decide which of these snowballs is not telling the truth. That's it, time's up! Who's holding up 1 finger? You are correct! Jonah was swallowed by a fish, not Paul. Nice work. Mary is our next Bible character. Now, which of these is not true about Mary? 1. Mary was married to Joseph. 2. Mary was a carpenter. 3. Mary was Jesus' mother. So, what do you think? Which of these snowballs is not being completely honest? Time's up! Who's holding up 3 fingers? You should be holding up only 2. Joseph was a carpenter, not Mary. Abraham is our next Bible character. Now, which of these is not true about Abraham? 1. Abraham had a son named Isaac. 2. Abraham moved to the Promised Land. 3. Abraham was Israel's first king. It's time to make your choice. Which of these snowballs is not telling the truth? Time's up! Who's holding up 3 fingers? You are correct! Saul was actually Israel's first king. Are you still standing? If so, very impressive. We've got 1 more round to go. Joseph from the Old Testament is our final Bible character. Now, which of these is not true about Joseph? 1. Joseph was the son of Pharaoh. 2. Joseph had a colorful coat. 3. Joseph was thrown in prison. Which of these snowballs is not telling the truth? Time's up! Who is holding up 1 finger? You are correct! Joseph was the son of Jacob, but he worked for Pharaoh. Great job, everyone! I don't know about you, but I could go for some hot chocolate right about now.
Wow, that was great. Now back to our Xtreme hosts. It seems John had questions about whether or not Jesus is the one.
We all have questions from time to time. The truth is that we can always talk to God about those questions.
Just as John sent his followers to talk to Jesus, remember, if you don't know something, ask.
Now, let's head to small group and talk more about the unanswered questions we may have. Or, if you're watching on YouTube, here is a discussion question for you. What questions do you have?
Hi, I'm your Xtreme Kidz host, Jeffrey, and we need your help. We are looking for 10 people right now to serve on our Xtreme Kidz studio team in productions, scripts, editors, and as hosts. Remember, you can serve at any age from anywhere, so say yes!